Welcome to 50 Years of Coptic History in Australia. Joining me today, I have Mr. Farag Ghobran, a long-time servant of the Coptic Church in Sydney, Australia, and one of the key people in the foundations of the Coptic Church. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Farag.
Thank you, Susie. Thank you.
So let's start with your journey from Egypt and how you came out to Australia.
I started thinking about migration in 1965 with my sister and brother-in-law. But at that time, my wife was pregnant with Nadine, my daughter, and she didn't want to migrate with a little child. So I stayed in Egypt. They came before me. My sister arrived here in 1966, and my brother 1967. And then I came 1970 after that, after my daughter she was about 4.5 years old, and she can depend on herself doing her necessary things. And that's how it started. To migrate from Egypt, it was a difficult decision, of course. You know, at that time, as a pharmacist, I have good jobs. I was working with an American company, but I saw that the social fabric of Egypt at that time started to be tearing apart. You know, that especially after the 1967 war. And then I had decided just to have to go to Australia at that time, to come and raise up my children here. Yeah, that's the main thing. I arrived 1970 in 24th of May, 1970. And I had to sit for a qualifying exam for my qualifications, and which was in August the same year. And with God's help, I passed that exam, and I was registered as a pharmacist in August 1970, and started my career from then, took my career from then. My brother and my sister was preceding me here, and they started their activity with the church, we were like corresponding in Egypt about the church, and they asking the late Pope Kyrillos VI to send a priest, and then Father Mina Namatallah, the late Father Mina Namatallah, God bless his soul, came in 1968, and or early 1969. He left Egypt 68 and came here 69. Yeah. And we heard about that, and then there was some problems about the church, and the late Bishop Samuel was in touch with me because he knew that I'm migrating to Australia, and he told me about what's happening here and how can I get involved in the church, whatever it is. And when I arrived on Sunday, and the next Sunday I was in church at Sydenham, at that time. I saw, of course, people, mostly the whole Egyptian community at that time was congregated in one church because there were not much in there. Yeah.
So when you arrived, there was very limited services and a small congregation?
Only one church, St. Mary's and Venus at Sydenham, and only Father Mina Namatallah, the late Father Mina Namatallah, and only that one. And the second church after that was another story. If you like, I can tell you about that.
We will get to that in a moment, yes. So when you then arrived and you went to church, that after 1 week of arriving, did you get involved in the church, or did you have a look first, see what's happening?
I had a look first, and to see what's going on, whom I can befriend or whatever it is. As you know, getting yourself uprooting yourself from Egyptian culture to put yourself in another country. And then you meet Egyptians whom we are used to, but not the familiar faces you met in Egypt, new faces, whatever it is. So I started to see who is he, and everybody was welcoming me, of course, at that time, because a new arrival at that time was like a gift from heaven. And it's really, I can't describe it exactly, but everybody was happy to see someone coming from Egypt. At least to, they think that they made the right decision in emigrating, and some other people are taking the same decision to migrate to Australia at that time. Yeah.
So, after your arrival with some of the service in Australia, what were some of the early things that you did for the church?
The early things I did in church, there was a Sunday school for my kids because I had 3 kids at the time. The eldest was about 13 years, then 11, then 5 years Nadine, the youngest. So I wanted to find some Sunday school. At that time, there was very good Sunday school service at that time. There was the Murad, who is now Bishop Daniel of the monastery. There was Michel Abdel Sayed. Now he is in Melbourne. Amir Hanna was in Melbourne, in Northern Territory at that time. Wasn't here, but he was just corresponding with the servants here. And there was the late Amina Wadallah as well. And there's Sunday school was a very limited Sunday school at that time. And I started worrying about my children to get the good service of Sunday school teachers, servants of Sunday school, and these things. But I think they did their best to give them a good Christian education at that time. Yeah, yeah.
And then they started putting together boards or committees for the church, didn't they?
There was a small committee at that time, but it was a different proprietorship of the building and these things. Then 1972 came the late Bishop Samuel to organize things in a legal way and in a very strict clerical way as well. He registered the ownership as a holding company and not for profit at that time, because we should have like an approval from the Parliament of New South Wales to be a religious body. But the only thing in front of him at that time was to register it as a company. And it should have a board. So he said, okay, the board should be all deacons. Whoever wasn't a deacon should be anointed a deacon at that time. And that's Bishop Samuel. And I wasn't anointed a bishop before. So he anointed me a bishop at the time. And then we had an election. So the election, a board of, I think, 10 at that time. Yeah. No, 12. 6, 10. No, it's a board of 10. 10 deacons. And the chairman of the board was the priest, Father Mina Namatallah, the late Father Mina Namatallah is, yeah, at that time. And most of us were elected at that time, and in the presence of His Grace Bishop Samuel, yeah. And we started serving the church as the administration of the church, of course, yeah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Farag. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you.